So this isn't an average week in my life. It is the first of many art career journeys, with the first one being in Japan. Stay tuned for next week where I'll share the adventures of Group 2. So this art career journey in Japan trip has been something I've been planning since the beginning of this year, and to this day I still can't believe it finally happened. A group of 24 different artists from different countries, states, and cities have come together to meet in Japan, and they took a chance on this. So let's take a moment to applaud for Group 1 for walking so the rest of us can run. So in this trip, we go to Osaka, Kyoto, and then Nara. But when I first arrived in Osaka, it was so humid. September was not the greatest time to come to Japan, but the thing is whenever people sign up for these group trips, there is a poll everyone signs up for, and September was the top chosen month for this trip. And while September in the rest of the world is probably autumn vibes, in Japan, it is still disgusting summer humidity. So one of the first things I did upon landing in Osaka was taking a jog around a nearby park called Nakanoshima Park, which was beautiful. People were walking their dogs. It was a great place to draw if it just wasn't so hot outside. But this was also the first time I was traveling with my boyfriend and his mom, who tagged along on this journey and were so helpful in me managing my first group trip ever. So on day one, we pretty much just spent it preparing all of the gift bags, which consisted of a sketchbook, some stickers, my top 2 favorite pens, a pen pouch, and some other goodies that I would hand to everyone before the group dinner on day 1. After that, we met our tour guide Eric. We headed off to our very first group dinner where we all were able to debrief our journeys to get here, talk about what we're most excited for about this trip in Japan in an izakaya styled restaurant. And then afterwards, we had a little post-dinner chit chat where, we got to have more of some calm conversations of getting to know some of the other travelers in the group. But we still had to rest up because the next day was our first day of an Osaka city exploration day, where there was also an art goals workshop hosted, where in each location we went to, I would also draw in my sketchbook quickly, because the goal of this art goals workshop is to learn how to draw fast and draw with intention, because a lot of us don't really know how to draw from life quickly. But when you are in a busy city like Osaka, trust me, you will be forced to draw quickly. So we first went to Kuromon Market, where you could try different foods, check out different shops. But for me, I was just studying the location and just drawing the different sites. Afterwards, we headed to another part of Osaka called Shinsekai, which is a really interesting city that has this carnival type of vibe to it. And while this trip's itinerary was for the most part pretty followed throughout the trip, I will say that there were so many free goodies that came along with it that we originally weren't even anticipating. Like, our guide Eric was able to still fund us trying these little skewers at one of the restaurants in Shinsekai, and afterwards people were able to shop, try more foods if they were still hungry, and also, of course, make art. So one of the cool things about this trip is that all of your intercity transportation is pretty much covered. So we all got our own IC card to travel amongst these different cities. And let me tell you, traveling in a group of 24 people around Japan is not easy when it's already such a dense city in itself. But our guide Eric was a godsend, and he and I really worked together to help manage the group. So after a busy day in Shinsekai, we then headed to Osaka's most iconic landmark, Dotonbori, which is a Times Square of Osaka, like with all of the billboards and lights and the Running Man. And I will say by this part of the day, we were all so exhausted, so everyone kind of split up to do their own thing. I was able to check out this small temple nearby called Hozenji Yokocho, which was such a stark contrast from the rest of the city. And pretty much most days after the planned activities, I would try my best to go back to the hotel to work a little bit, to share the stories in real time to the best of my abilities, where I would just include a snippet of each day. But I'll be real, like after the first 2 days in Osaka, I was just too busy having fun with everyone else because I was like, this is what I'm here for. I can always draw some other time after this trip is over. So the next day we headed out to Osaka Castle, which we were not allowed to draw inside of it, but you know, we were still able to admire its beauty and check out to the inside, which is kind of like a museum, I would say. And afterwards we were able to embark on this really leisurely river cruise where they served us snacks and drinks and we could draw there. And it was just such a nice break because let me tell you, group 1 really suffered the most when it came to the heat of Japan. Like, I don't know what happened, but it was just so humid and hot every day. I am from Los Angeles, where our summers are pretty bad, but let me tell you, dry heat and humidity are complete different things. We were seeing each other in our most vulnerable moments, like we were sweating our lives away, we're stinky, exhausted, but everyone was still in such high spirits because it's Japan and this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity where all 24 of us can travel together. So after the river cruise, we hosted our first art careers workshop where unfortunately there was kind of a rain warning, so we did not host it outside. Originally I wanted to do it at a park, but instead we hosted it in this little stage that happened to be in Umeda Station, which was honestly perfect because it fit all of us. And what happened in this workshop is I would break everyone up into their respective industries like comics, illustrations, entrepreneurship, graphic design, animation industry, and I would pretty much give advice catered towards everyone's individual groups or hear their struggles and answer their questions and encourage them to have discussions amongst themselves, because the thing about being an artist and a working professional is that connections are really what matters the most in your career. I truly believe from my experience. I have only gotten a lot of my positions because of my past experiences with other coworkers and friends I made from previous projects, and this is the opportunity to really foster that type of community. Like I said to everyone there, if we were able to get the funds too, we could probably all just work on our own films or projects. So after our first workshop, everyone split off to do their own thing. After another hot day in Osaka, the next day we were transferring to Kyoto. The first day in Kyoto was not an easy one. While we transferred to Kyoto and immediately got into a tea ceremony, our group was so big that we had to split up into 6 different taxis to get there, but thankfully it was fine. We started off the tea ceremony a little bit late, but we were able to leave it off on a wholesome note, being reminded that ichigo ichie, which means one chance, one meeting. You know, we have so many chances in life for anything to happen, but for this moment in time is the only time that all of us are here together in this room, which is really bittersweet. And then after our tea ceremony, we headed off to Kyoto Station where we were able to do some exploration, try out some of the foods or restaurants. Good thing we stocked up on our bellies because the next thing we had to go do was head over to Fushimi Inari Shrine. So for those of you who don't know, this is kind of the shrine that has like this endless number of torii gates, which are just pretty much like sponsorships from different companies, I guess. So when you're walking through this, you're just like, damn, I wish I had that many sponsors. But jokes aside, it was quite a challenge. Some of us stayed on the bottom and just shopped around and chilled because, again, it was like 90+ degrees, humidity. I don't know how we even got through this hike. We pretty much walked over 12,000 steps on an incline and decline. Thankfully, once you get deeper into the hike, there are less people and it gets more shady and you get this beautiful view of Kyoto from the top, even though that view wasn't even really the top. And of course, the moment we reached the peak, I had a poop scare where suddenly I was like, I really need to go to the loo right now, but there's a certain point on this hike where there are no more bathrooms. So if you go on this hike, note to use the bathroom while you see them. But yes, afterwards, after a super exhausting day, we just went back to the hotel and checked into our new Kyoto hotel with our luggage that all luckily made it there. And afterwards, me, my boyfriend, and his mom went out to a really nice dinner at this really cute restaurant. So by the time we left the restaurant, they were just really cute and waving goodbye to us, which was a nice send-off for our next day in Nara. So Nara, of course, is the deer park heaven that everyone knows about, and it was just so funny because after the train ride getting there, we were going over to Kasuga Taisha Shrine, and you know, we were all just like, guys, don't get distracted by the deer. You're gonna have free time later to play with them and whatnot. But once we got to Kasuga Taisha Shrine, there were just so many of us that just got left back on the trails because everyone was so enamored by the deer, which I don't blame them for. So we checked out the rest of Kasuga Taisha, which was so beautiful and calming once again. And afterwards, we took an ice cream break and headed over to Todaiji Temple, which was super big, one of the most epic temples I think I've ever seen in my life. Then we all got distracted by the deer merch once again, but hey, that's where I probably did most of my shopping, in which you'll see in an eventual Japan haul. Afterwards, I hosted my first deer life drawing workshop where we found this area where a lot of deer were just chilling around. So I was able to kind of just give a talk about how life drawing is important for each respective art industry that, you know, I initially broke up in the groups of. So in animation, it's like you might value form and line confidence more and in your drawings, whereas, you know, for comics and illustration, sometimes you might need more cleaned up art for that, whereas for entrepreneurship, you might just need drawing styles of deer that cater towards your brand as an artist. You know, at the end of the day, there are no rules to drawing deer. It is just what is going to best fit you in your specific art career journey. But, you know, it was such a magical moment. Ever since I was a kid, Bambi was one of my favorite films that got me really inspired to become an artist, because I specifically remember watching the behind the scenes of the animators and artists studying the deer in real life and drawing them, and I'm like, here I am in real life doing the same exact shit that I really thought that originally working in the animation industry would help give me the experience of, but no, here I am giving myself that experience without an animation industry being the gatekeeper of that, I guess. After a day in Nara, we had a karaoke session because Group 1 is unstoppable. Throughout the 90-degree humidity and heat and thousands of steps per day, they were still down to go out for a whole karaoke session that night, and it was just really fun for all of us to just get loose together. Even our tour guide Eric joined us in the fun. So after a really late karaoke night, the next day was our last full day in Kyoto, and it started off with me hosting 2 workshops. One of them is a money making for artists workshop, where once again I had each group break up and I would go around each group and talk about what they're currently dealing with, what are their struggles between them and making money as an artist, and I would encourage everyone to have discussions amongst themselves and the other people in their group. And I would also talk to them about what worked for me when I was or am working in their specific industry when it comes to making that bag as an artist, because, you know, at the end of the day, art can always just be your hobby, but what makes it a profession or what you do for a living is once it starts supporting your lifestyle, which means money is involved. So it is a very important discussion to have. And then lastly, we ended it on a super wholesome note on a story and comics artist workshop where everyone took around 10 minutes to draw one of their most story-worthy moments of this trip, and we chose a few people to get up and just pitch their stories to the group, which was, you know, a really nice way to just wrap up, you know, what everyone remembered the most from their personal experiences on this trip. And I would just give, like, you know, little feedbacks back on their pitching style, because when you're an artist, you have to really know how to pitch yourself, speak to an audience, and really present yourself and sell yourself to people, which they don't really teach you in school unless if it's for storyboarding. So I just kind of would give little feedbacks back on how to have a more engaging presentation or pitching style. And afterwards, we headed out to a nice soba lunch that our guide Eric took us to, and between that time and the group dinner, we were able to just kind of do our own thing. I personally was writing everybody's goodbye cards and their goodbye gifts, and also trying to sneak in as many signatures as I can for Eric's thank you card. And that night ended with dinner at this super bougie hot pot place. We surprised Eric with our card there, and I also handed out everyone's goodbye gifts there as well. And it was kind of an emotional moment because that was the last time all of us were ever going to be in the same room together. And suddenly the realization hit that, like, oh shit, we have to go back to our own home countries and cities now, but it was a really touching moment. And I will have to say that I was quite pleased and surprised by how the hotels and the dinners, for the most part, have really been on the nicer side, especially those hotel breakfasts. So on our last final day, everyone said their goodbyes. We tried to have breakfast together in this room for breakfast, and as our group was dwindling down to the last few people, we all just kind of stuck together for as long as possible, which I thought was really cute because we just didn't want this moment or experience to end. And lastly, it was my turn to leave. Me and my boyfriend took his mom back to the airport so that she could fly back to California, and then afterwards me and my boyfriend headed off to our next transition hotel, where basically we stayed at until group 2 began, in which you can see in this vlog called A Day in My Life as an artist in Japan, if you wanted to see what I did during the break. But that was pretty much the conclusion of our first art career journey ever in Japan. I kind of am a little bit still in disbelief that everything worked out so well and became such a wholesome experience. So thank you so much to Trova Trip for helping me organize this experience that I am still processing even after I got back. But other than that, if anyone from group 1 is watching this video, I miss you guys, and I hope that we will have a reunion soon. And for any of you watching these videos and want to join one of our future art career journeys or art retreats, we currently have a sketchbook retreat in Greece in May 2025 that you can check out down in the links below, which we have a few spots left for $100 off. Don't miss out on that if you want to experience something like this trip, but in Greece, and I will see you all in the next one.